The story kicks off with a boy named Kaido, who's up against a slime. As it lunges at him, he sprays it with bug killer and feels a surge of pride at taking it down. Kaido's been stuck in this dungeon for 2 years, but he's still at the lowest rank among explorers, only able to take on slimes on the first floor. He's defeated 99,999 of them so far, aiming to wrap up the day by reaching the milestone of 100,000. To do that, he ventures deeper into the dungeon and encounters a rare golden slime. He sneaks up on it, spraying it, but it dodges, so he pulls out his spray gun to finish the job. To his surprise, he doesn't level up, even after killing such a unique slime. Disappointed but determined, he grabs its magic core, hoping it's valuable. As he approaches the slime, he notices it dropped a servant card. Trying to keep calm, Kaido checks its stats, realizing it's a Valkyrie card, something he knows to be extremely rare, as Valkyries are regarded as demigods in mythology. He looks around to make sure no one's there to steal it, then searches the database but finds no information about it. Hoping it'll fetch a good price, he thinks of selling it to buy better gear so he can finally compete with the higher-ranked explorers who barely acknowledge him. At the reception, he trades in 3 slime cores and asks about the value of angel-type servant cards. The receptionist tells him they sell for over 1 billion yen, leaving Kaido in shock at its potential worth. Later, he meets his friends Shinji and Hayako, who tease him about still being at level 3. They reminisce about the first time they encountered a goblin on the dungeon's 2nd floor. It was a disastrous fight that ended with them downing potions to recover. They're amazed Kaido has been battling slimes for 2 years without getting bored, but he insists he has his reasons. At home, his parents worry his dungeon hunting might affect his studies, but he assures them he's managing. While in the bath, Kaido debates using the Valkyrie card to get stronger and explore the deeper dungeon levels. However, he also knows that selling it could make him rich. The next day, on his way to school, Kaido meets his classmate Kura, who mentions she saw him return home late. Not wanting her to know about the dungeon, he lies, saying he was out with friends. He then runs into Shinji and Hayako, quickly pulling them aside to cover for him. But Kura catches on as all 3 give different stories, leading her to suspect the truth. In class, Kaido asks his friends what they do with a rare servant card. They say it's best to sell it since servants can only be summoned in a dungeon, and the cards are worth a fortune. Though they assume he doesn't have one, Kaido knows that summoning the servant means he won't be able to sell the card, but he still wants the power boost. He heads to the dungeon, uses the card, and an enormous angel appears, preparing to grab him. But she quickly transforms into a girl who introduces herself as Selfie. Kaido feels disappointed, thinking she looks weak and that he's blown his shot at becoming a billionaire. Sensing his mood, she asks if anything's wrong, but he brushes it off and decides to take her monster hunting. Selfie quickly senses a slime, and when Kaido asks her to handle it, she obliterates it with a divine lightning spell, leaving him speechless. He realizes she has 170 battle points, making her 17 times stronger than him. When she mentions she's hungry and eats the slime core, he realizes that her appetite might be a problem for his income, so he decides to let her locate slimes while he kills them to save their cores. After finally leveling up, Kaido unlocks a skill called Slime Slayer, boosting his stats by 50% when fighting slimes, though he thinks it's a bit useless. Selfie cheers him up, making him emotional. As he heads home, he promises to summon her again soon and returns her to the card. At the reception, Hitsugaya is shocked at the number of slime cores he brings in, revealing it's a record haul worth 15,000 yen. That night, Kaido marvels at Selfie's strength and considers taking on the 2nd floor with her help, though he's still nervous about facing a goblin. As he falls asleep, he dreams of a hero, Captain Katsuragi, who delved deep into the dungeons to uncover their secrets and was praised for his courage and wisdom. Inspired, Kaido heads to the 2nd floor with Selfie the next day, determined to discover the dungeon's mysteries and become a hero like Katsuragi. Kaido suddenly starts trembling, and Silly notices, asking if something's wrong. He reassures her that he's fine, and she holds his hand, which helps him calm down. Grateful, he recalls his first experience on the dungeon's 2nd floor 2 years ago. Just then, Silly senses a goblin nearby, and Kaido instinctively starts to flee. But he remembers Captain Katsuragi, knowing he can't be a hero if he doesn't face his fears. Determined, he begins slapping himself, confusing Silly, who watches as he tells her he's just trying to psych himself up. Together, they sneak up on the goblin, and Kaido hesitantly asks Silly to handle it since he's not quite brave enough. She readies her divine lightning, but Kaido changes his mind, deciding he wants to face it himself. However, his legs start shaking, so he tells Silly to step in if things get dicey. Kaido takes a swing at the goblin but misses, and it charges at him. He manages to block with his shield, shoving it back, then tries again but gets disarmed. As it lunges at him, Kaido blinds it with his spray, grabs his sword, and goes in for the final blow, only to trip on a rock. Luckily, his sword lands in the goblin by accident, winning him the fight. Just as he's about to cry from relief, Silly reassures him he's amazing, though she decides she should step in next time. Kaido levels up and unlocks a new skill, Goblin Slayer, granted to those who conquer their fear of goblins in solo combat. This skill boosts his stats by 10% when fighting goblins, though only temporarily since luck played a part in his win. With Silly by his side, Kaido hunts more goblins, steadily increasing his stats. Curious, he asks if she knows anything about the dungeon's secrets, but she replies that all she knows is that she must be useful to her master. Later, Kaido returns to Hitsugaya, who's surprised to see him with 4 goblin cores and praises him for his progress. The next morning, his mom wakes him up, worried because he's so sore he can barely move. When he meets Kura, she suspects he's been in the dungeon, but he brushes it off, saying he's just been training to build muscle. She tells him that buffing up doesn't really suit him, leaving him slightly deflated. At school, he tells his friends he started hunting goblins, and they're shocked he managed to beat one. Annoyed that they doubted him, Kaido shares that he feels more confident and plans to go deeper into the dungeon. He pushes through, hunting goblins and reaching level 10, amazed by how much his stats have improved. He even unlocks a powerful new skill, God's Blessing, granted to those loved by the gods, which boosts his stats based on divine favor. Overjoyed, Kaido suddenly starts bowing to Silly, thinking the skill's related to her. Grabbing her hand, he thanks her, and she smiles, happy to have a master who appreciates her. Soon, they encounter a glowing skeleton, which Kaido assumes is linked to his God's Blessing. Silly creates a barrier to protect him, blocking the skeleton's attacks. He tries striking it, but the skeleton proves surprisingly durable. He then asks Silly to use her Divine Lightning, which successfully defeats it. However, it only drops a red core, disappointing Kaido since he was hoping for something rare. Silly mentions she's hungry, so he gives her the red core, despite wondering if it might be valuable. Later, he asks Hitsugaya about the core's worth, and is stunned to learn it's worth over 2 million yen. She realizes he's upset about losing it but encourages him, saying he might find another glowing skeleton someday. That night, Kaido can't stop thinking about the money he lost, but he also feels Silly deserves a reward for all her help. He realizes how much stronger he's become with her by his side, deciding he's ready to try the 3rd floor despite the tougher monsters that might attack in groups. The next day, Kaido tells Silly he'll be fighting solo for a bit, not wanting to rely on her too heavily. Silly, worried, asks if she's done something wrong, but he reassures her, explaining that he wants to grow stronger on his own. He tells her he trusts her and thinks of her more like a sister than a servant. Touched, she feels lucky to have him as her master. A goblin appears, and Kaido insists on handling it himself, but he ends up getting injured. Broke, he buys a potion from Hitsugaya, realizing he'll need new equipment and plenty of magic cores to sustain Silly's appetite. Determined, Kaido returns to the dungeon's 1st floor to stock up on slime cores. As he explains his plans to his friends, he manages to convince Kura they're just discussing something unrelated. With a pile of cores collected, he prepares to enter the 3rd floor. Just then, Silly senses a silver slime. Kaido attacks it with his spray gun, but it tries to escape, so Silly finishes it off with her Divine Lightning. The slime drops a Devil-class servant card, and Kaido considers whether to use it. Finally, he decides he's always wanted a mix of divine and demonic power by his side and summons the new servant. A girl named Lyria appears before him. Kaido is disappointed upon summoning Lyria, as she looks nothing like her card image, and she immediately criticizes him, calling him too dumb to be her master. Silly is intimidated and hides behind Kaido, urging Lyria to respect him. Lyria, however, insists she's harmless and is only acting in her devil-like way. She mentions she's hungry, but Kaido tells her she hasn't done anything to earn food yet. Just then, Silly senses a slime nearby, and Lyria, eager to eat, offers to take it down. She summons her spear and launches a fireball, causing a massive explosion. Kaido is impressed by her strength, given her 130 battle points, and hands her the core from the defeated slime, which she eats but then demands more. When Kaido refuses, she begrudgingly obeys. summoning sheep to fight but getting annoyed when he asks her to use her corrosive breath on them. Promising her another core, they encounter a goblin, and Lyria's corrosive breath melts it instantly, terrifying everyone with its power. Kaido decides to pause and gather better equipment before tackling the third floor, though Lyria is eager to press on. Silly assures Lyria that Kaido only wants to keep her safe, convincing her to wait until tomorrow. The next day, Kaido shows off a new, expensive crossbow, but Lyria scoffs, saying that a weapon's quality isn't about its price. Soon, they run into two hellhounds, and Kaido attempts to shoot them with the crossbow, but he misses, and the hounds charge. Silly raises a barrier, and Lyria blasts them away. Kaido rewards her with a core, but she insists she deserves both since she defeated both hounds. He promises more later, and she warns him he'd better keep his word or she'll send him to hell. Two wild boars attack next, and Lyria tries to blow them up, but one boar slips through. Kaido decides to take it on, shooting an arrow that hits its eye, but the boar keeps coming. As he stumbles, Silly tries to help, and he lands another shot that kills it. Silly praises him, and Lyria points out he only stumbled because he panicked, though he insists he just tripped. Kaido soon realizes he's earning less money due to Lyria's constant requests for cores. Overhearing a group discussing their progress to the 6th floor, he wonders if he'll ever reach it with Silly and Lyria. At school, Kaido's friends notice his unusually good mood and express concerns about university plans, which Kaido admits he hasn't thought about. Kura overhears him and asks which university he's aiming for, and he casually mentions he still hopes to go wherever she does. In the dungeon, Kaido notices Silly seems a bit withdrawn and tries to cheer her up, but she insists she's fine. At home, Kaido watches a movie that makes him worry Silly and Lyria might end up fighting each other, so he decides to address it. The next day, he meets Kura, who notices he looks tired. He explains, vaguely, that he's dealing with two girls who don't seem to get along, asking for advice. She suggests asking the nice one how she feels. Taking her advice, Kaido brings it up with Silly, asking if she dislikes Lyria. Silly admits she was scared of Lyria initially but has grown to like her. She then confesses she feels a bit sidelined, explaining that Kaido's given Lyria more attention and cores and has been talking to her less. Kaido reassures her, promising to be more attentive. They continue on, with Kaido praising Silly, which makes Lyria jealous, so she demands he praise her too. Soon, they encounter a wild boar, and Silly levels up after defeating it. She's thrilled and credits Kaido for helping her grow stronger. 3 hellhounds suddenly approach, and Kaido asks her to take care of them. She uses her divine lightning, impressing him by taking them down at once. When another wild boar rushes at them, Silly raises a barrier that lasts longer than usual. Lyria is about to finish it off, but Kaido insists on handling it, defeating it with his crossbow. He rewards Silly with 2 cores and nothing for Lyria, as she didn't participate in the fight. Silly, noticing her growing hunger due to her level up, asks Kaido for more food. Hitsugaya later remarks on his declining core collection, prompting him to hunt slimes on the 1st floor. Lyria wants to help, but he stops her, explaining that he needs to collect cores for selling. Lyria criticizes him for summoning them if he doesn't want their help, but Silly says their presence still supports him. Lyria decides to cheer him on instead. Hitsugaya is surprised by his slime cores, assuming he'd be further along in the dungeon by now. Kaido admits he's waiting for stronger equipment, searching online for armor but shocked by the high prices. The next day, they encounter a rare slime, and Kaido insists they defeat it. Silly and Lyria unleash their spells, obliterating it. Expecting another servant card, Kaido is surprised to find a magic orb which he believes will help him fulfill his dream of becoming a wizard. He breaks it, gaining a new water spell, eager to try it on a hellhound. He has Silly raise a barrier and tells Lyria to assist if needed. Kaido casts his water spell, but it barely phases the hellhound, which lunges at them. Lyria finishes it off, leaving him disappointed by his weak spell and regretting not selling the magic orb. That night, Kaido runs into Kura and thanks her for her advice, saying it helped with the 2 girls situation. She realizes he was asking for personal reasons but laughs, amused by his excuse. Kaido, however, senses something's off, wondering if she might be jealous. Though he brushes off the idea as impossible, Kaido returns to the dungeon, determined to improve his water ball spell. He experiments with shaping it, which exhausts him, and he collapses on his way out. As he exits, he bumps into a girl named Ari, who notices his fatigue and warns him to be more careful. He apologizes and walks away, and Ari, noticing his dedication, decides she and her companion Miku should train harder too. Back in class, Kaido gets scolded by his teacher for sleeping, but he explains he's committed to training, making everyone laugh. His friends ask him why he's training so intensely, and he says he's working on his water ball spell to make it useful for his dungeon raids. Kajura overhears and, concerned, asks if he's been in the dungeon, but he quickly covers by saying he's just learning to dance. She advises him to take care of himself. In the dungeon, Kaido uses his water ball to defeat a goblin by drowning it, but he realizes he's stuck at level 11 due to insufficient experience points. Determined to progress, he decides to venture deeper into the dungeon. The next day, he appears wearing the expensive suit he found online. Lyria mocks him, saying he looks like a loser. He explains the suit's thin material provides some protection, and he also bought a bracelet to enhance his spell power, though he hasn't tested it yet. They reach the 4th floor, but Silly senses danger, and soon, a giant cockroach appears, sending the girls into a panic. They begin blasting it with spells as Kaido explains that the floor is infested with roaches. However, he realizes they've run off, leaving him behind. He catches up to them on the 5th floor, and Silly apologizes for rushing ahead. Kaido reassures her, adding that they managed to clear the 4th floor quickly. He collects roach cores and offers them to the girls, but they dislike the taste. Venturing further, they encounter sand and mud monsters, which are immune to physical attacks. Realizing his weapons are ineffective, Kaido asks for Lyria's help, and she incinerates the creatures with hellfire. They continue exploring, but Silly detects something behind a wall. She blasts through it, revealing a secret passage. Kaido warns the girls to be careful, but Lyria accidentally activates a trap, sending an arrow flying into Kaido's shoulder. After recovering, they press on, eventually arriving at a massive door. Silly senses a powerful presence inside, but they can't open the door without a key item. Unfazed, Silly blasts it open with divine lightning. Inside, they find 2 boss monsters, an ogre and a slime. Deciding to focus on the ogre, the girls unleash spells, only to discover the ogre is immune to magic. It charges at them, but Silly erects a barrier to shield everyone. Kaido orders Lyria to handle the slime, while he attacks the ogre with his crossbow. However, he soon runs out of arrows. He notices that Lyria is struggling, as the slime is also magic-resistant. Desperate, he tries his water ball, which unexpectedly transforms into ice due to the bracelet's power boost. He forms the ice into spikes and launches them, aiming at the ogre's head, successfully defeating it. The slime lunges at Lyria, but Kaido jumps in to protect her, though his shield begins to melt. Silly retaliates with her divine spear, piercing the slime, but it survives. Kaido considers retreating but remembers Captain Katsuragi's words, realizing he can't become a hero by running away. Gritting his teeth, he charges at the slime with his spray guns, attacking relentlessly. Silly supports him with a barrier, and Kaido keeps attacking until the slime's health is depleted. The slime finally dissolves, and the girls celebrate, but they quickly notice Kaido's injuries. He drinks a potion to recover, while Lyria levels up, and Kaido is pleased to see he's reached level 15. Feeling confident he can keep up with other explorers. Checking the monster drops, Kaido finds a rare red core and a magic sword, though it looks oddly like a kitchen knife. When he tries to sell the red core to Hitsugaya, she's intrigued, asking where he found it. He tells her about the hidden dungeon, and she promises to investigate, agreeing to buy the core for a high price since its value is unknown. She then invites him to join an upcoming event where explorers will form parties to explore the 7th floor, and he eagerly agrees. Back in class, Kaido boasts to his friends about clearing the 6th floor so he can participate in the event, excited to team up with other adventurers. Kajura overhears and assumes they're talking about a dance party, and the others play along. Amused, she asks to join him. At the event, Kaido arrives to find many adventurers participating. He spots Ari's group and wonders if they might end up forming a party together.